Hello, everyone, and welcome to a brand new episode of Flash Forward, the show where I talk about everything in regards to the Flash, every series, every spin-off. This week we're going to be talking about The Flash, The Fastest Man Alive, which is a 13-issue series that takes place after Infinite Crisis. In fact, 1 year after Infinite Crisis, because after Infinite Crisis ended, they decided to make every single series jump 1 year ahead of time narratively, while another series called 52, which was happening at the same time, covers the missing events during that year. Where we left off in Infinite Crisis was Superboy Prime was attacking the Teen Titans, and Bart Allen came in with Wally West and Jay Garrick, and they all pushed Superboy Prime into the Speed Force along with the help of Barry Allen and Max Mercury and Johnny Quick. And Superboy Prime was locked in the Speed Force for a while, and eventually he escaped, and the only ones who managed to escape with him were Bart Allen and Jay Garrick. Wally has seemingly disappeared alongside his family. They just faded into the Speed Force, trying to stop Superboy Prime. And so we don't know what's happened to them. When Bart came out of the Speed Force, he had been aged up 4 years, so he's no longer 16, he's now 20. And the Speed Force is also dead, so there's no more Speed Force. So Bart has lost his powers. Jay still has his powers because he didn't get them from the Speed Force. So Bart has given Barry Allen's costume to Jay and said that he's not going to be the Flash, and that Jay is now the fastest man alive. And so that's where we leave off. That's where this series picks up. It's a year after that. This series is very controversial. A lot of people don't like it for many reasons. One being Bart Allen becoming the Flash, something that even his creator is not a fan of. Mark Waid is not a fan of this at all, and understandable. You know, like, he didn't create Bart Allen to become the Flash. He wanted Bart Allen to be his own character. He wasn't even a fan of Bart Allen becoming Kid Flash, which was a thing that had happened recently before, you know, he was aged up. He wanted Bart to remain as Impulse, because Impulse is his own identity. And the whole point of Bart was that he wasn't just going to be, like, the next Kid Flash or the next Flash. Like, he didn't want to be fit into that mold of, oh, he's just a sidekick, you know, and he's just going to follow in the footsteps of everyone that came before him. But, like, writers like Jeff Johns and editors like Dan DiDio have done the opposite of that. Not only have they forced him to become the Flash, but also, though to be fair, Jeff Johns didn't want to do this. It was all Dan DiDio's idea. But at the same time, they also changed his personality, which Jeff Johns was responsible for. In Teen Titans, like, Bart Allen used to be, like, a very erratic child who kind of had, like, ADHD, was, like, quite wacky and, like, fun and chill and stuff. But now he's a lot more serious, and he's also a huge, like, know-it-all, because in the Teen Titans, Johns had Bart read pretty much everything, so he's like the smartest, like, he's like one of the smartest people now. He acts a lot more like Barry Allen, and that's a problem. Like, Bart no longer has his own personality. His personality is now contrived of all the other Flashes put together. He even gets Wally's job in this series, which is another reason why Bart is no longer an interesting character, because he's just a jumble of personalities and characteristics of other characters. Like, his cast in this, like, his side cast, aren't even his own characters from his own series. Like, because Bart had his own series called Impulse, and he had a bunch of side characters in that were his. None of them are in this, and new characters were created for him, and a lot of his side cast is just old characters from Wally and Barry's books, which is kind of disappointing. But enough talking about that. Instead, let's just get straight into it and see it for ourselves. It's written by Danny Bilson and Paul DeMeo, with art by Ken Lashley, Carl Kerschel, Sal Velluto, Ron Adrian, and Andy Smith. So it begins a year after Infinite Crisis in Keystone City, where there is a couple of army trucks moving along, like, driving along the road, holding hazardous materials. All of a sudden, a van crashes directly into them, and a man driving the van has, like, a balaclava on his head, and he's saying, like, the first casualties of the next war, my war. And it's ironic because, like, these vans are being driven by army men. And so Jay Garrick comes in because he's the only person protecting Keystone City at the moment. He comes in and, you know, to stop the van, but when he opens it up, there's no one inside it. And it turns out that the guy responsible managed to get away inside one of the army trucks. Like, he drove away in it. So Bart Allen is sleeping at home when he's woken up by his friend Griffin, who he works with at Keystone Motors. Keystone Motors used to be a regular garage, but now it's been turned into a super high technological garage where robots pretty much do everything, and you only need a couple of people to, control the machines and stuff. So a lot of people have lost their jobs. Like, everyone that worked at the old Keystone Motors lost their jobs, and they're not very happy about it, especially the leader of these mobs, whose name is Thatcher. Like, he is really not happy about this, and Griffin doesn't really help. Like, immediately, when we're introduced to Griffin, he is not likable at all. Like, he's supposed to be Bart Allen's friend, but you wonder why Bart Allen is even friends with this guy. They're also roommates as well, because Griffin is just a total dick, especially to people who aren't as rich as he is, or like he sees them as stuck in the past. Like, he's obsessed with technology, and he's also very ageist. Like, he talks shit about his own grandparents and says, like, I'm glad I got away from my grandparents as soon as possible because I had no use for them because they know nothing about technology. And Bart is like, man, you shouldn't be talking shit about your grandparents. I'd never talk shit about, like, Jay Garrick and Joanne. Like, they're old enough to be my grandparents, and they raised me great. And Griffin's like, you're just confused, Alan, but tonight we'll get you stupid. Meanwhile, there's this character called Valerie Perez who works for Star Labs. She's getting messages from, like, this mysterious guy who's later revealed to be her father. Like, she mentions that it's her father trying to get in contact with her, and she's like, don't talk to me, like I told you not to talk to me. And this is a new character, by the way. There's nothing to establish here. She was introduced in this. Somebody who isn't a new character, though, is Tina McGee. Tina McGee appears in this, and when you meet Valerie, you think that it's supposed to be Tina because she looks like Tina because she's got black hair. But no, Tina doesn't have black hair anymore. She's got brown hair. Like, it took me a second to realize who was supposed to be who. Like, which was Tina and which was Valerie. Her last name is Perez, and I feel like that's probably a reference to George Perez. So, they at Star Labs are partly responsible for what's going on at Keystone Motors. Apparently the CEO of Star Labs is behind the new Keystone Motors. And Thatcher is not a fan of that guy. So Bart and Griffin go to a nearby bar where they get drunk. Or Bart gets drunk, even though I guess this is a version of the Flash where, like, he can get drunk. Because normally the way it is that the Flash has a high enough metabolism where he can't get drunk, but apparently Bart can. But I guess he's not supposed to have powers anymore. So Griffin is, like, hitting up women, and he tells Bart that he needs to go and find a woman to hook up with. There's a weird moment where Griffin's like, you born yesterday? They're not gay, they're just trying to turn us on. Like, it's really weird. It's like these two women that are, like, just hanging together. And Bart's like, you sure? And he's like, watch the Griffin at work. I'm gonna teach you everything I know. It's just such a weird thing, like, to point out. So it's revealed that Thatcher was the guy in the balaclava. He's going around, like, attacking people connected to Keystone Motors so he can get revenge for what they've done to it. So, the next morning, Valerie goes to talk to Bart, who is hungover from the night before. Griffin believes that Bart and Valerie had slept together when that's not the case. He just assumes that because Valerie shows up and he's like, "Oh, a hot girl wanting to talk to Bart. They must have slept together." So she introduces herself to Bart. She says she works at Star Labs and that she wants to find out what's wrong with Bart, why he lost his powers. And Bart has no interest in finding out because he just wants to live a normal life. So he says no. He's like, screw you, go away. So Thatcher enters the central control room of Keystone Motors, where Bart and Griffin work, and he sets a bomb in the middle of it, and then the bomb sets off, killing a bunch of people and trapping Griffin under a whole bunch of technology and stuff. So Bart's just like, Griff! And he's like, help me! Someone, please! And so Bart, like, activates his speed powers, because apparently he's still connected to the Speed Force. But wasn't the Speed Force supposed to be dead? It turns out Bart was lying, and has been lying to Jay and Joanne for a long time. He's been connected to the Speed Force for at least a year now, and hasn't told anyone, because he's been trying to keep it a secret, because he doesn't want to be the Flash. So, like, his speed powers activate, and because he hasn't used them in so long, he loses control and gets sent flying through a nearby wall. Meanwhile, Griffin is calling out for help, for someone to help him. Jay Garrick shows up in order to help Griffin, and when Jay sees Bart, he's like, "What? That's not possible. Like, the Speed Force, please, go now. We have to talk." And so Jay saves Griffin, while Bart kind of just stands there with lightning just, like, fizzing around him. And then Bart goes through his entire history, which I have covered in previous episodes of this show. So if you want to learn about Bart's history, then go back and listen to those episodes. Basically, he was born in a lab and was tested on and stuff, and had to be put into all of these... He lived in virtual reality for a long time, where he was trained, and eventually he was saved by Iris, who sent him back to the present, and that's when he met Wally West and became Impulse. That's basically everything you need to know about Bart. And then eventually he became the Kid Flash, and then the rest is history. So Bart wakes up from, his nightmare of seeing his past. Meanwhile, Griffin is in the hospital vomiting up because his organs are all mashed up. And then he starts, convulsing on the ground, and green lightning starts spurting from his body. Bart goes and visits Jay and Joanne, where Jay basically has a dispute with him, where he's like, "You told us that the Speed Force was dead, and we believe that. But it wasn't. You still have your powers. Why didn't you tell any of us?" And it's and Bart's like, "Because I just wanted to be normal, and at the same time, the Speed Force might be back, and I might have my powers, but every time I use it, I feel like it's going to blow me apart. It's if I do, I don't want to..." It's Jay's like, "Look, Bart, now that we know you're still connected to the Speed Force, we can help you to control it. Why not call Tina McGee at Star Labs?" If I do, I don't want to control it. I want Star Labs to remove it from me. I have to get dressed. I'll go to the hospital to see Griff. The explosion at Keystone Motors messed him up pretty bad. He's been traumatized, electrocuted. I'm not about to add ignored to the list. But wait. The Speed Force is yours alone now, Bart. You can't run from it. Don't you see? See what? Your path. Wally's gone. It's your time. I need to be understood by the two of you more than anyone else on Earth. And I don't want to hurt you. But I won't be the next Flash. I want a normal life. A life without the Speed Force. Thatcher heads to the CEO's headquarters of Star Labs, because he's blown up Keystone Motors. So he heads to Star Labs because they're going to use AI to create automated workforce, and Thatcher does not stand for that, so he wants to show them that he means business. So Tina is trying to call Bart in order to contact him so that she can see him. She just wants to talk to him. Meanwhile, Bart goes and visits Griffin. Griffin is apparently healed from his horrible injuries already, which Bart sees as being quite suspicious, because there's no way that he would be able to heal that quickly. It doesn't make any sense. And then Bart notices that part of the ground has been burnt by something mysterious. There's just burnt marks on the ground from where Griffin was apparently convulsing, which is also suspicious. So Bart and Griffin head back to Keystone Motors, where they meet with TV reporters to talk about what happened. Frank Chaya is there, as well as Murillo. They're both there, the detectives. They're in this book, briefly. So Bart goes inside the building with Griffin, and Griffin sees what happens to him. He thinks back to what happened to him, kind of freaks him out. And that causes his green electricity to start surging out of his body, which causes a huge explosion, which causes somebody who is on a high-up rafter to fall off. So this guy's hanging for his life, "Help, somebody help me!" Bart activates his lightning to go save the guy, but Griffin activates his lightning too, his green lightning, and jumps up and saves the guy before Bart can even do anything. And so he gets applauded for this. They're all just "Mr. Gray, what just happened? What were those sparks, and how did you..." "Skills, sir. Looks like I've been blessed with some new skills, and just in time to do some good here in Keystone City." And then Bart's just "Oh, man. Like, this doesn't look good. So Bart goes and visits Valerie, where Valerie reveals that she has a Flash costume for him to use. And Bart's just like, look, I'm not willing to put the costume on, but the suit. And she's like, it's yours. It's part of the legacy. If you don't want it, it'll be here in the vault. And so Bart's like, I can't wear the suit. But somehow I can't leave it behind either. So he grabs the Flash ring, he opens it up, and sucks the suit into it, and then leaves with it. Bart then wakes up one night and quickly calls Valerie, saying that he needs to see her as soon as possible. And he's basically just like, I want you to figure out how to get rid of the Speed Force. You know, any test, anything, I want it gone now. Meanwhile, Thatcher has left the car right outside Star Labs, which has a bomb in it. The bomb begins ringing. And then it blows up while Bart is on the phone to Valerie. Valerie's just like, no! Because he hears the explosion. So he quickly takes the suit out of the ring, puts it on, becomes the Flash, and heads straight for Star Labs to see what happened. So Bart heads to Star Labs and he grabs Valerie and brings her to safety, as well as everybody else off-panel, then spins around the labs to get rid of the fire before meeting with Val and telling her that although he's put the costume on this once, it doesn't mean that he's the Flash. You know, Jay Garrick's the only Flash the city needs. I gotta run. And so he leaves. He heads off to a nearby gym where his friend Griffin is showing off his new abilities. Thanks to his powers, he's able to bench like 500 pounds. Bart's like, I don't like what the changes that Griffin is going through, especially the attitude. And I'm like, Bart, what are you talking about? He already had this attitude. Like, yeah, his attitude has shifted more towards showing off his powers, but like, he was always like big-headed and whatever. Like, he was always a douche. So Griffin accidentally throws the 500-pound bars that he's benching, causing them to crash on a nearby car. Griffin then begins just channel surfing through all the police channels, trying to see what's going on. And he basically turns to Bart and is like, we need a vigilante to be able to deal with these situations, you know, and that's going to be me. And Bart's like, we don't need anyone to deal with it. We already have the Flash. And Griffin's like, yeah, but like, that guy's really old. Like, his time's up, don't you think? You know, Bart, my accident was a gift. It was meant to set my life on a new and powerful course. Don't tell me, with great power comes great reward? Right. So Griffin is not going to be doing this for the right reasons. He wants to help people purely for the praise and glory. Valerie is called in to see Tina McGee, where it's revealed that her father is Manfred Motor. Now, the reason why that name is important is because in the Flash special that I covered a long time ago, Manfred Motor was a villain from all of the different time periods of the Flash. Like, he fought Jay Garrick, he fought Barry Allen, and he fought Wally West. And then he also fought a future version of the Flash called John Fox in the far future. And each time he fought them, he was older and very different, a lot more technological based, to the point where he just ended up becoming a being made out of energy. And because Valerie is Motor's daughter, that doesn't look good on her. And so the board doesn't really want to keep Valerie on at Star Labs. But for now, Tina McGee is going to keep her on, because she likes Valerie. But she's like, once the board decides, like, makes a decision, I'm not going to be able to argue against that, Valerie. We're just going to have to wait and see. So, Valerie heads off to see Bart in her, underground facility the next day, where Bart is going to be doing tests with her, especially because he wants to see how he can, like, get rid of the Speed Force, or, he's kind of mixed at the moment. It's not like he really wants to get rid of it, but at the same time, he still doesn't want to be the Flash. So yeah, she tests his powers, and they just get set off, causing Bart to be like, ah! It's like all this lightning comes out of him. It's like, the readings were off the dials. Are you alright? No, why are you even trying this? Why are you so interested in me? Is it your career? And Valerie's like, yesterday wasn't the first time you saved my life, Bart. And it's revealed that apparently when Valerie was still in high school, she was saved by Bart Allen. I don't know how old Valerie is supposed to be right now, but, 4 years did not go by in real time while Bart was in the Speed Force. Only a year has gone by. So is Valerie supposed to be, 18? I guess so. While Bart's 20? That makes sense. She does not look 18. She looks like she's in her 20s. She looks as old as Tina McGee is drawn in this. And so Valerie looks at Bart and is like, I guess you could say I've been a fan ever since. And then she kisses Bart on the lips. And Bart, like, kind of smiles. And there's like sparks around them, like literal sparks, because he's got powers. Bart heads home where he sees Griffin, and he's just like, can you turn down the stupid TV? I don't want to hear all these, like, police reports. And Griffin's just like, hey, I like the outfit. It's kind of cool, but what do you think you're doing? Every story has its beginning. And so Griffin puts on his own costume, which kind of looks like the Pied Piper's costume, or like Robin Hood, mixed with Batman. And then he jumps out the window, and he's like, I'm going to go stop this man that's holding his own child hostage. And so he jumps out the window. Meanwhile, this guy is holding his son hostage above a building. He's like going to drop him. And that's when Griffin shows up. He's like, yes, that's what I'd like to know. And who the hell are you? I'm the Griffin. That's right, he calls himself the Griffin. The moment I read this, I laughed my head off because it's so stupid. But I guess it's supposed to be. Ex-wife took my boy away, but I know he's better off in God's hands. You're deranged, let him go. You think I'm crazy? I'll show you crazy. Give me that kid. And Griffin grabs him, and the guy just, like, falls off the build. Like, the kid falls off the building, right? Because the guy drops him. And Jay grabs the kid. And they're all like, yeah, the Flash, the fastest man alive. How about a photo with the boy, Flash? And then the dad pulls out a gun and is like, it was your fault. You made me drop my son. You want to go? Let's go. And so the guy shoots the gun at Griffin, and Jay quickly catches the bullet. And then he points at Griffin, and he's just like, this work is not for amateurs. I don't want to see you on these streets again. And Griffin in his own head is just like, your day is done, old man. The streets are mine. Bart hears about what's going on, and he reveals to Jay that he did save everyone at Star Labs. Like, look, I did ask Tina to rebuild Barry's suit. A little underhanded, sure, but you wore it, and I'm damn proud you did. Like, thanks, but nothing's changed, so I don't want you to think that. I've said my piece. It's up to you, Bart. It always has been. There's something else. They got a tentative ID on the bomber. Thought you might know him from work. He's next Keystone Motors welder, Luke Thatcher. Thatcher? He was PO'd about the old timers getting laid off, but I can't believe he'd go that far. Have the cops pick him up. Griffin overhears this conversation and is like, well, I guess I'm gonna go find Thatcher. So Murillo and Chai are outside Thatcher's place, waiting for the right to break in. Meanwhile, Griffin doesn't care and decides to break in anyway. Like, the Griffin doesn't need a warrant. He doesn't even need a door, and he just rips his way through the roof. Rivet charts. What the hell? And he sees that Thatcher is going after the CEO, William Slout, who is currently on his ferry. He's like, so Griffin's like, first, let's take out the competition. And he picks up a phone, he calls the Keystone Police. He's like, this is Luke Thatcher. Get me Detective Murillo. I'm ready to give up, but only to the Flash. And so Jay is on the ferry, and he gets a call about Thatcher. He's like, Thatcher? Alright, detective, I'm on my way. And so he leaves the ferry, which is not a good thing, because it would have been nice for him to be there to protect Slout. Outside of the ferry, we see Thatcher on like a little dinghy. It's like, my poor man's torpedo will make a nice birthday present for the rich old bastard. And meanwhile, Griffin is sitting on top of the ferry, waiting for Luke Thatcher to arrive on the ferry so that he can take him out. So Griffin has diverted Jay Garrick away from Slout so that he can take on Thatcher himself. So he jumps onto Thatcher's dinghy and attacks Thatcher and straight up kills him. He just plunges his hand through his heart and kills him with his like green energy. But then the dinghy keeps going towards the ferry and is heading straight for a nearby boy. And the dinghy's going to explode, so Griffin quickly grabs Slout and is like, get down! Dinghy hits the boat, explodes, but it hits the boy, and the explosion doesn't destroy the ship. It just, everyone's safe. And Jay sees what's going on from a distance. Oh my god, what happened? Someone tried to crash the party. The Griffin saved us all, Jay. Guess there's a new hero in town. And so Slout commends Griffin for what he's done and gives him a $100,000 reward. He's like, protecting our city's a tough job. Donations are always welcome. And Bart's watching from the crowd, and he's like, posing like a rock star, soliciting funds. He killed a man. So Jay and Bart go and talk to one another, and this is where we get to see that Jay is really, like, holding up this series on his back. Like, he's carrying this series really hard. Like, he's the main reason to read this. Like, he's great in this. So, like, he and Bart are talking. You know, Bart explains to him that, like, you know, Griffin tried to collar Thatcher and bring it in, and he's like, it gets worse. Detective Murillo says the call that sent me up to the Point Breeze originated in Thatcher's apartment. At the same time, the SWAT had the building staked out. Thatcher wasn't anywhere near the place, but Griff could have slipped in and out without the cops seeing him. He wanted to make sure I was out of the way. And so Bart's just like, he's changing, man. Like, ever since what happened to him, Jay, like, he's become more hostile and paranoid. He's like, I noticed that, and I feel like I've been going through changes as well. You know, over the last year, I've been getting slower. I don't have the Speed Force to give me an edge anymore. What are you so afraid of? And Bart's like, everything? I feel like a runaway train. It's alright to feel the power, but to fear the power, but at one time or another we all did. But the Flash is sworn to protect the city. We can't just let it become the stage for some superhuman frat boy's photo op. So Bart goes and sees Griffin, who has bought himself a new car. Griffin tells Bart to jump in the car, and instead of saying no, Bart decides to go with him, and they head to a nearby club to pick up chicks, because that's what Griffin loves doing. And while we're there, Valerie is at the club, and she sees that Bart is hanging out with Griff, and she's like, oh, gross, I don't want to talk to Bart anymore, because she's hanging out with that, like, he's hanging out with that guy. And, she thinks that Bart is, like, interested in all these other women, when he clearly isn't, you know. This girl's getting a lot close to Bart, and he's just like, ugh, get away from me. So they head back to Griffin's and Bart's apartment in their car, and Bart refuses to sleep with any of the women. He's just not interested. Well, Griffin's just like, thinks he's in love, dumbass. Don't leave me hanging, bro. You gotta take the blonde. Why? You're the Griffin. You can handle them all. You know, I've been trying to help you out, Ellen, but I'm not so sure you're worth it anymore. I don't need that kind of help. Good, because I'm out of here tomorrow anyway. I need a crib worthy of a hero. And it's like, good riddance, Griffin. Get the hell out of here. Get out of this comic. Like, I don't even want to see you anymore. Like, you're just annoying. And Bart notices Griffin's hand and notices that it's looking all weird and frail. He's like, your hand? What's the matter with your hand, Griff? What? Nothing. Just some dry skin. Griffin heads into the bathroom. He looks at his hand and notices that his hand looks like that of an 80-year-old. And that kind of makes Griffin freak out because, you know, he's ageist. He's, like, afraid of old people. It's really weird. He's, like, age-phobic or something. So Bart goes to meet with Tina McGee, and a huge thing is revealed. So apparently, the Speed Force did not die. It actually got absorbed by Bart. So he is the Speed Force. It's inside him. That's why he's been feeling this power that could cause him to explode. That's why he's been getting visions of, like, Barry and Wally's pasts. It's because he himself says, I am a walking graveyard. Because the Speed Force is in me, and so are Barry and Wally. Like, they are inside me. Which is such a weird thing. Like, who came up with this? Like, I guess it's interesting, but at the same time, it's like, why? This is such a weird plot point. That, like, Bart has become the Speed Force, and Barry Allen and Wally West are within him. But at the same time, he never mentions Max Mercury or Johnny Quick as being inside him as well, because they were in the Speed Force too, but, you know, screw them, we're not going to talk about them. Valerie leaves the lab, and Bart chases after her, and is like, what are they talking about? Like, they said that you're getting a replacement for you. Why? And Valerie reveals to Bart that it was revealed that her father is Manfred Motor, and because of that, she's going to get fired and replaced. And she's like, isn't it crazy how, like, you're in love with the woman who is the daughter of your family's sworn enemy? It's like, I thought this was more than keeping company. She's like, it is. But will you run me home now? I mean, literally, like you did when I was 16? With the entire Speed Force boiling inside me, you sure want to risk it? I don't want to hurt you, Val. She's like, when I'm with you, I'm not afraid. Neither am I. So he puts his costume on and he takes Valerie home. Meanwhile, Jay is trying to stop a couple of criminals in their van, and they start mocking him because he's old. And then all of a sudden they're like, oh, look out! And Griffin appears on the road in front of them, causing a massive explosion, which causes the car to get sent flying. Jay quickly grabs the car and saves one of them, but the other one he couldn't save. So, like, one of them, like, died. Or at least... No, he does save both of them. It's weird, because the way that, like, so after this little meeting, Bart will go and meet with Griffin. right? And like Jay has has a moment with Griffin where Griffin reveals it, like he reveals his face and he's been aging. He like looks like an old man now. Like, what the hell are you talking about, Jay? I look fine. And so Bart goes and meets with Griffin, and Bart says that every time Griffin has tried to help somebody, somebody has died. But so far, Griffin has only done like 3 things. Like he stopped the kid. Nobody died in that situation, which he does point out in this. He's like, I didn't kill the kid. He killed Thatcher. That's understandable. But in the last encounter, like, Jay says that he almost killed them. Like, but he didn't kill these 2 guys. So what is Bart talking about? Like, look, Griffin's not a good guy. Like, he sucks. But, like, there's no reason to lie. Like, you don't have to say, like, oh, you've been killing someone every time you save somebody. It's like, no, he killed 1 person and that's it so far. You know, but that's still bad. But yeah, Bart and Griffin get into a disagreement. Bart's just like, look, if you're not going to stop doing this, Griffin, I'm going to have to stop you myself. Griffin's like, you're going to take me out? With what, bitch? And he just goes, and like attacks Bart with his hands, and then Bart just like zips around him. He's like, where the hell did you learn that move? Karate lessons? You gotta move for this, Karate Kid? And he grabs Bart by the neck and throws him out of his window, causing Bart to fall down below. And as he falls, he puts the Flash costume on and runs back up the building. Meanwhile, Valerie is at home, where she sees a mysterious blue energy coming from a nearby door. She's like, Bart? When she hears like a knock, knock, knock on the door, she's like, Bart? The blue energy comes out from the bottom of the door, and there's a narration over this that says, finding her was a simple matter of writing the signal to her cell phone. I'm good that way. How many years has it been? She won't recognize me, but she knows my voice, and I know hers. And she opens the door to find her father, Manfred Motor, who is now an energy being made out of blue energy. She's like, come give Daddy a kiss. So already Manfred Motor is like a big fucking creep. So far, like, I'm not finding this series to be as bad as everyone says it is. I don't like Griffin as a character, and I think it's weird that they're bringing back Manfred Motor of all things, but so far this isn't too bad. It's just the concept of it sucks. Like, Bart being the Flash is just not a great idea. The way that Bart is pictured in this series is not good. But Jay's great in this. Like, if there was any reason to read this, it's if you're a Jay Garrick fan, because he gets a lot of really nice moments in this. And also, you know, Tina McGee is in this, and I'm always happy to see Tina McGee. But if you're enjoying this episode so far, then please feel free to subscribe to the channel. I'm trying to get to 100 subscribers, and I'm hoping to get to 100 subscribers by the end of this year. So please subscribe and like the video and to help me out. So after being thrown out the window by Griffin, Bart ran up the wall but lost control of his powers and ended up running up into the sky, almost into Earth's atmosphere, where he plummeted back down into Keystone Zoo. He sees a gorilla and thinks it's Grodd at first, but it's not Grodd. The gorilla grabs him, but the Ranger saves the Flash, and then Cyborg shows up, and is basically just like, hey, Jay told me everything, I came here to check out on you. I just wanted to see how you were doing. Looks like you're having some trouble with the Speed Force. It's like you've been talking to Jay. Thought I might be of some help. I'm really glad to see you, Vic, but I don't know how you're supposed to help. The entire Speed Force is locked up inside me. Jay said this vision of Barry's suit seems to be containing it. Sometimes, but mostly I just lose control, and it scares the hell out of me. You? Scared? That impulsive kid I knew never let being afraid stop him from jamming on the throttle. Look, I raced back to Earth to warn everyone of Superboy Prime's escape, but I don't remember most of what happened right before that. I was gone less than 1 year, but I've aged 4. Scared? You bet I'm scared. Do I feel like my old impulsive self? Only once in a while. When's that? And he's like, well, I helped Valerie get home, and that made me feel like my old self. So, then trust me on this, Bart. It's not the Speed Force itself. It's your fear of it that's causing you to lose control. Just trust the Force? Come on, Vic. This isn't some movie. It's my life. Here's a lesson from mine. You can't ignore your fear or go around it. You gotta go through it. I had to when I got outfitted with this hardware. It's just not that easy. Never said it would be. But if you face it head on, you just might find yourself. I'll give it some thought, Vic. Fair enough. And so Bart heads off to go and have dinner with Joanne and Jay. He's invited Valerie to have dinner, but she doesn't show up. So Bart decides to go and look for her to see if she's okay. Heads to her house, where he finds that it's completely empty, and he finds a note that says, Bart, sorry, but I just can't make this work right now. I'm heading west to start over. Val. And so Bart heads back to Jay and Joanne and is just like, Val's not going to be able to make it, unfortunately. And then they see Griffin driving by in his car super fast, and they assume that he's probably going to go and try and stop a crime. So Jay decides to try and beat Griffin to the punch. And he heads off, and Joanne's like, shouldn't you be going with him? And Bart's like, he'll be alright. Jay's the... And then he quickly puts his suit on and leaves. It's like, the fastest man alive? No, Bart, you are. And so we're seeing a little bit more of Bart's impulsive nature. If there's one positive thing I can say about Bart being the Flash, it's that at least he's starting to act more like his old self instead of the, like, you know, big-headed, like, know-it-all version that we got from Jeff Johns. So Bart catches up to Jay and he's like, mind if I help you? And he's like, I was hoping you would. And Griffin notices the Flash, and so Jay is like, stop the car, Griffin. No time for joyriders. The cops have been down at 5th and Main. I got a job to do. Jay and I will handle it. You're gonna hang up your cape. You've been MIA for a year, Speedo. The people at Keystone count on me now. And the Griffin works alone, and he blasts Bart out of his car. And so Jay and Bart quickly race to the crime scene before Griffin can get there, and they take down the guys inside who all have their guns and beat Griffin to the punch. And so when Griffin arrives, he's really upset. He gets really mad. He's like, this is my city, my crime to stop. And so all the guys that are outside just start laughing at him, like all the guys that they arrested are just like, this is my city, listen to that. He's one like my 5-year-old. That's telling him, Flash. He's like, I'm not going to stand here and take this. Griffin, whatever power you have is eating you alive. We can't help. We can help, but you gotta give it up. Give it up? I'm just getting started. And he shoots a helicopter above him. The guy in the helicopter is like, I'm losing it. Gonna have to put her down. So Chaya gets onto his radio and he's like, Detective Chaya, I've lost contact with the chopper. It's gotta come down somewhere. We'll find it. And so Bart's like, it's time to bring the Griffin in. Way past time. And so they go to search for the Griffin. Like, they gotta try and find him because he's gone missing now. Meanwhile, Valerie is being held in some kind of cell, and it's revealed that one of the people that helped kidnap her is Inertia. Inertia is a character that I have never talked about because I haven't covered the Impulse comics on this show, and I haven't covered anything else that Inertia shows up in. But Inertia is a clone of Eobard Thawne, called Tad Thawne, who I think was made with a little bit of Bart's DNA as well. And he comes from the future, and he basically just looks like a dark version of Impulse. And he's working with Mode for some reason. I don't know why, but they're working together. Mode even calls him like a friend, which is weird because I don't think the two of them have ever interacted with each other at all until now. Inertia is only helping him because they share the same goal. To get rid of every single speedster until there's only one worth remaining, which is Inertia himself. Meanwhile, Griffin plans on kidnapping Jay so that he can figure out how Jay doesn't age. Because Jay doesn't age. He's an old man forever. Or he ages incredibly slowly. And so Griffin wants to figure out what it is and take the power for himself so that he stops aging. So Griffin manages to kidnap Jay in the most stupid way possible, where Jay just shows up and sees the guy fishing, which is Griffin in disguise. He's just like, morning. And then Griffin just like electrocutes the metal bar like right next to Jay. And like it electrocutes Jay, knocking him out. Like that's how he gets him. He's like, he's a scientist, right? Fool should know a steel bridge conducts a current. And so Bart is with Tina McGee, where they talk about Motor. I said Mode. His name is Motor. Sorry. And they don't know whether or not to believe Valerie because he hasn't been seen for years and he's supposed to be dead. But then Bart gets a call from Joanne saying that Jay has gone missing, so Bart goes to search for Jay. Jay has been kidnapped by Griffin and is hooked up to all sorts of technology, and Griffin is just like, why do you not age? And Jay's like, because of my powers. I don't think there's any way that you can reverse your aging or whatever. Like, if there is a way to do it, I don't know what it is. Like, you can torture me all you want, you'll probably never find out how to do it. You know, I'll probably die before you figure it out. You'll die? That's on you, old man. Give me what I need. Otherwise, scream all you want. No one is gonna hear you. And he turns the machine on and starts electrocuting Jay and he starts screaming. And so Wally goes looking for Jay. Meanwhile, Jay is hooked up to the machine. He starts vibrating his hand through the shackles. He breaks through the shackles. He goes straight for Griffin, and Griffin's just like, I warned you, Garrick. And Griffin just shoots Jay Garrick with a ton of energy. Bart searches for Griffin's whereabouts, and he eventually finds him, but he's too late because Jay is dead. Griffin succeeded in killing him, and so Bart arrives and he quickly ties Griffin up. But then Griffin reveals that he'd sucked Jay's life force to make himself younger, and at the same time, Griffin has also gained the ability to destroy things that he touches. So whenever he touches something, it disintegrates. So he touches a nearby column, which causes it to disintegrate, causes the ceiling to crush in, to fall in, and so Griffin makes his escape. Bart starts freaking out because Jay's dead, but he jolts him back to life with the Speed Force. Turns out Bart is slowly figuring out how to use the Speed Force. Meanwhile, Valerie has been kidnapped by Motor and Inertia, and Motor's goal is to rip apart her atoms and use them to, basically kill her and use her, DNA and stuff to recreate a new body for himself. Inertia is working alongside Motor for now, but he plans on turning against him eventually because he doesn't see Motor in any of his future plans. Bart heads to the hospital where Tina McGee tells him and Joanne that Jay is going to be fine, but that Griffin has been set loose on the city, so Bart's going to have to go and find him and stop him because it's guaranteed that he's going to be up to no good. And we see that Griffin is up to no good. He wants to try and be a hero, and now he's resorted to creating problems for himself to solve. So he destroys a nearby building, he destroys a nearby bridge by causing it to disintegrate, and then tries saving everybody on the bridge. But Bart arrives and begins saving people too, which pisses Griffin off. She's like, you always had great timing, Flash. You're gonna steal my thunder! It's enough, Flash. This is my show. Mine! And meanwhile, Bart is just, annoying him, grabbing people and saving them. It's like, there shouldn't be any structural fatigue on this span for years. Did you really think you could sell this as an accident? Pretty smart, aren't you? Last smart guy that messed with me, I threw out a window. And so he, electrocutes Bart. Because Griffin doesn't know that the Flash is Bart yet. We only need one hero in Keystone. Anyone else is dead weight. Griff, it's me, Bart. Liar, Bart was weak. Was. And so Bart, zips around in a tornado, which causes Griffin's electricity to backfire. And they both fall off the bridge into the ocean below, where Bart grabs Griffin, but Griffin, electrocutes him back. And Bart's just can't go like this. No fear. Been through much worse. Coming back to me now. I remember it all. I remember all of it. And in his eye, you see a vision of Barry giving Bart his ring. And so Griffin gets out of the water and he's just and then he sees a giant piece of rock almost fall on him, and it does. It hits him, but Bart quickly goes in and grabs him, stops him from being crushed, and he brings him to the surface. And Griffin is like, why did you bother, Bart? I'm a dead man. If you knew the answer, you might have become the hero you wanted to be. And Griffin just looks up at Bart and is like, you always were the smart one. Sorry, bro. And then Griffin dies. Good riddance. Who cares? Griffin is dead. I don't care. Griffin meets a tragic end. And so Jay begins healing. Bart goes and visits him in the hospital. Runs in the family. You did a heck of a job. Welcome back, Flash. It was hard to see Griffin go out like that. I'm afraid there was no other way for it to end, dear. Something else happened. I've had trouble remembering what happened during the crisis with Superboy Prime and the Speed Force. But suddenly, as I was underwater, running out of air, I remembered everything. Max and Barry and Wally, we were all trying to find a way to beat Superboy back to our Earth. And Wally gave me the ring. And so it's revealed that, during Infinite Crisis, they decided to come up with the idea of traveling through the Speed Force fast enough to get back to Superboy before he would arrive and kill everyone. To warn everyone. But they say that, going that fast through the Speed Force, it's highly likely that you might just end up absorbing the Speed Force. You don't know what's going to happen. Wally says that he's going to do it, but Bart says that he'll do it instead. And so he's like, Wally shouldn't risk it. He has Linda and the twins to think of. And Grandpa, I know you'd be the first to volunteer if you could. I'm the best chance we have, maybe the only one. And so Wally gives the ring to Bart. He's like, the ring is yours now, Bart. My suit's inside. It'll protect you. I'll be okay. I'll have all of you with me. You can count on that. Always. And so that's how Bart became the Flash. And so Jay just looks at Bart and he's like, well, there's certainly no doubt now, son. You truly are the Flash. The fastest man alive. And so that ends the first 6-issue arc of the Flash, the fastest man alive. And by the end of the 6th issue, Bart is now officially the Flash. It took 6 issues for him to become the Flash, and we've only got 7 more issues left before the end of this series as we go into the next arc that I'm sure will explore Motor and his plans with Inertia. So now that the Griffin is dead and Bart Allen is officially the Flash, we move on into the next chapter of Bart's life. The mayor of Keystone City is expecting Bart to show up to receive a medal for defeating the Griffin, but Bart doesn't show up, which Jay sees as being quite odd, as he should show up to, ceremonies like this as the Flash. Instead, Bart has chosen to leave Keystone without even telling Jay, where he just goes straight to Los Angeles to start a new life there. Because he thinks that Keystone City is fine with Jay, and that Bart needs to try and find himself in a different city. It doesn't really make sense that Bart wouldn't tell Jay about this, but I guess the writer is trying to make Impulse impulsive, but in doing so, he's kind of going against part of the character, which is that, there's no reason why Bart wouldn't be open with Jay. Like, he's been open with Jay about other things in the past. Yeah. So he heads to Los Angeles, and when he gets there, he sees that Abracadabra is putting on a magic show where he makes a nearby gem store disappear using his magic wand. And in reality, he's actually teleported the building to the Alps, and he's teleported himself too. So Bart quickly gets dressed as the Flash and heads off to the Alps because he's super fast. And this is where we hit one of the problems with this series, is that, Bart Allen is the Flash, but there's nothing that's separating him from anybody else. You see him as the Flash, and you could very easily forget that it's Bart. Because he acts a lot like Wally. He doesn't really act like Bart. And it doesn't help that his entire sidecast in this is also just Wally's sidecast. Yeah, it's basically like if you just took Wally West Flash and just replaced him with Bart. That's essentially what they did. They didn't even really try to make it feel like this is Bart's series. None of the characters... he had his own comic books with his own characters, and none of them are in this. Instead, they created some new characters and then just used a bunch of old characters. So Bart heads to the Alps where he faces Abracadabra in battle. Kadabra tries to shoot him with his magic wand, and Bart grabs a jewel and uses it to reflect the wand's beam, teleporting Abracadabra to the middle of the Amazon or something. It's somewhere where there's some alligators, and while he's there, he mentions that he's been talking to Inertia, and that Inertia has been talking about the Flash and has been saying that this is not the same Flash that Abracadabra knows. This isn't Wally West. And Kadabra kind of realizes this when he sees the color of the Flash's eyes, which are gold. Because I guess he's been keeping a track on what color eyes the Flash has. But that helps him kind of realize that maybe Inertia isn't spouting bullshit, and that he actually is a different Flash, and that he needs to go and talk to the Rogues about this. Meanwhile, we find out that Inertia is meeting with Deathstroke in order to get a chemical that helps him become faster, and Deathstroke's this chemical's really bad, you're at risk of, killing yourself by taking this, and Inertia's whatever it takes to be faster than the Flash, I don't care. It's also then revealed that Inertia is working with somebody who is called Cradle, who lives in the future where Inertia comes from. So he asks Cradle to teleport him to the future because he has a piece of a trigger device that he needs in order to activate the regeneration machine that Motor is trying to use to regenerate his body using the body of his own daughter. So he teleports back to the present day in order to go meet with Motor and Val. Meanwhile, Bart moves to a place called Casa Lebrun Bungalow Court in Hollywood, where he bumps into this woman whose name is Roxanne Snow, clearly being set up to be some sort of possible love interest or just a side character in the series. Inertia heads back to Motor and activates the machine that Motor is using to regenerate himself, and the whole building explodes in blue energy. Bart continues to read Val's notes because he received a note from Val saying that she couldn't deal with being around him and that she needed to leave. Meanwhile, Val is climbing out of the wreckage of the blown up building. Motor is seemingly gone. Reading this, I believe that that Motor is probably inside Val's body and that he's going to possess her or something. They haven't said that yet, but that's the conclusion that I'm coming to. Val just runs across the desert where she hails down a truck in order to get a lift home or somewhere. And this truck driver is a piece of shit and wants to take advantage of her, so he grabs her hand and is like, yeah, you can come with me if you let me have some fun. And then he gets the crap beaten out of him by a mysterious assailant who is revealed to be Inertia. He's like, you thought I was Bart, didn't you? Unlike that globe you were in Motor's suspension chamber was designed to fail. Genius, right? Bigger bang than I figured, though. Took all I had to outrun it. By the way, a magician with a grudge told me that your ex has ditched Keystone for Los Angeles. So apparently, according to Inertia, Motor's machine was supposed to fail, and that it did. I don't know if I believe that, though, because it would be a bit anticlimactic if we had all that build-up, and then the Motor storyline just didn't even go anywhere, and he didn't even regenerate his own body or anything. It's hinted that maybe Inertia, messed with the system or anything, but I don't believe that, because, when he turned on the system, he was saying that, Motor is still a part of his plan of getting rid of the speedsters, so it didn't seem like he was going to betray him yet. I don't know, maybe it'll be revealed in the future. Inertia then pretends to be Val and calls Bart on the phone, telling him to come to New Vegas in order to meet Val. And so Bart agrees to do so. Not knowing that it's a trap. Alright, so Bart heads to New Vegas in order to meet with Val. He heads to the apartment where she is said to be, but when he makes it to the roof, all he finds is Inertia with a thing that replicates Val's voice. Bart threatens to beat the crap out of Inertia, which Inertia replies with, well, you're an adult, so it would look really bad on you to be beating up a teenager. Either you can back off and follow me to your precious Val, or fight the coyotes for the scraps. And so, Inertia takes Bart to the middle of the desert where they find Val, and he's basically put Bart in this situation where he's like, either you can save Val, but in doing so, you will activate a photon cannon that will shoot and kill you, and it follows you wherever you go because it's locked onto the Speed Force. Or you can just, leave her to die and survive. Bart obviously does not choose option B. He decides to save Val. He undoes the device and then outruns the photon cannon long enough that he can loop back and cause the photon cannon to destroy itself. Inertia sees that Bart has succeeded. He's like, crap. Activate the teleportal now! And he heads off into the teleporter portal. And then Bart and Val head back to Los Angeles, where they decide to spend the night together. Because the reason why Bart came to Los Angeles in the first place is because the note that Val gave him said that she was going west. And so, deep down, he was going west as well in order to see her. So they sleep together. And then Bart wakes up early in the morning and he's like, I'm just going to put on my Flash costume and just head out to go and see if there's anything going on in the city. And while he's out, it's revealed that Motor is still alive because apparently Inertia did actually turn against him and try to kill him. The way he monologues it, Inertia, it was really confusing because it didn't seem like Inertia was betraying him. It seemed like he was just activating the machine the way it was supposed to be. I don't know, I'm confused, but apparently he did betray him, and so Motor's really mad. He wants to get revenge on Inertia, but first he wants to go and see his daughter. He's turned over a new leaf when it comes to killing his own daughter. He doesn't want to do that anymore. He's realized that that's a mistake. But he still wants to kill Bart Allen because he still has a grudge against the Flashes. Motor being here is a bit of a problem because it essentially retcons that Flash special where the last person that was supposed to have fought Motor before John Fox was Wally, and then Motor was supposed to be gone for years until he comes back and John Fox fights him. But now we're retconning that he also fought Bart in between. And, like, the way this ends, like, it still leaves it open for him to return in the future and fight John Fox. But it's just an extra thing that, like, is like, why didn't anyone talk about him fighting Bart? You know, and it's because that's what happens when you retcon stories from the past, where they couldn't even think of Bart being, like Mark Waid was not thinking that Bart was going to be the Flash at that point in time when he wrote that story, you know? I don't think anyone was. So, yeah, Valerie confronts her father and says that she wants nothing to do with him. Her father says that he wants to kill Bart. Bart arrives in order to help Valerie and fights Motor. And the way that he beats him is that he runs out of the building and Motor chases after him. And he runs into a construction yard where there's a big magnet. And he turns on the magnet and he pulls... Because I guess... like, Motor has, like, magnetic waves in his energy or something, but the magnet manages to trap Motor. And that's how Bart beats him. It's actually kind of underwhelming. that whole plot line between Motor and Inertia got wrapped up so quickly, and it's because the next issue involves a new writer coming on, and they take the story in a completely different direction that changes Bart Allen forever. Like, you can tell that they had a lot more, like, Danny Bilson had a lot more planned out when it came to, you know, Inertia and the Motor plot. Like, Inertia does still play a role in the coming issues, but the reason for Motor's quick and sudden defeat definitely came from, like, the switch of writers and the change of the plot. So, Bart introduces Val to Jay Garrick and Joanne Garrick, and then reveals to them the worst reveal in the comics so far. Bart decides to get a new job, and the job that he wants is as a forensic scientist at the police academy. The reason why that's a problem is because it's making Bart even more like Barry Allen and less like Bart. Like, this was already a problem back in Teen Titans, when Bart became as smart as Barry. Like, he became, like, a know-it-all. You know, they've even started saying that, like, he's been late a lot, which is something that Barry was known for, but now Bart is becoming known for being late, and now he's joining the police academy as a forensic scientist. Like, this is not Bart Allen anymore. This is Barry Allen. But he's called Bart. Like, they're just making him exactly the same. Which is ironic because, like, 3 years after this, or 2 years after this, Barry Allen would be brought back to life anyway. So it's almost like Dan DiDio was, like, really wanting Barry to be back, and all he had was Bart, so he was just like, oh, just make Bart Barry. You know. Bart looks up in the sky, and he says, man, Granddad would probably be proud of me for doing this. And in my head, I'm like, nah, he probably wouldn't be. He'd probably be like, Bart, what are you doing? You know you don't want to be a policeman. You know you don't want to be a forensic scientist. Like, you're only doing this to be like me. You should follow what you actually want to do. Like, that's what Barry would probably really say to him. Meanwhile, Inertia is going to try and get his revenge on Bart. And, in order to get his revenge, he's going to need to find the rogues. So Mark Guggenheim takes over the Flash, and we open with Bart facing a villain in the middle of Los Angeles. A villain called Impulse, which is funny because Bart gets really mad at him for using his past name. He's on the phone with Tim Drake at the moment, Robin. Tim wants Bart to rejoin the Titans, especially now that he's a superhero again. And Bart's like, I'll get back to you, I'm busy fighting this guy. At first, reading this, I was a fan of how Mark Guggenheim's voice for Bart, because he had Bart acting a little bit more jokey and stuff in fights, and a little less serious, and that's how I feel Bart should be. You know, a little bit more loose, a little laid back, but still serious enough that he's going to get the job done. You know, and I very quickly changed my mind on Mark Guggenheim's voice for any character, because they all kind of have the same snarkiness that just gets annoying, where, like, everyone's just snarky to each other, and everyone kind of sucks in this. Especially Bart. So Bart defeats Impulse and hands him over to the police, and then notices a glowing pit, and when he looks inside it, he finds a device, and he's like, oh, what the hell is this? I guess I'm gonna have to take it to Val to see what's going on with it. So he takes it to Val, and she says that it's an apocalyptic device, and that she needs to study it more to figure out exactly what it is. And Bart's like, well, I'll put it in my locker for now, and then we can go out for dinner with our friends. So Bart and Val head out to dinner, and while they're having this conversation, by the way, they're just, like, being real snarky to each other consistently. It's like Mark Guggenheim can't do a conversation between two characters without them kind of, like, you know, being assholes to each other. So they head out to dinner with a couple of their friends, and the friend asks Bart, hey, like, have you ever been out with, like, any celebrities? And he's like, what, you mean Brad and Angelina? It's not like there are that many superheroes in LA, right? Except for the Flash, of course. And when she says that, Bart thinks that Val has told her that she's the Flash. And so he gets in a massive argument with Val out in the parking lot. And this causes Val to get really mad at him, because she's basically like, well, what if I need to tell someone? And Bart's just like, well, you can't. There's a reason I keep my identity a secret. Did you ever hear of this lady called Sue Dibney? You know, she was married to Ralph. He had his identity in the public. You know what happened to her? She got raped and killed. You know, she got raped and murdered, and I don't want that to happen to you. The way he says it is, like, really obnoxious and just, like, a weird thing to bring up at this very moment. Like, he could have brought up any option, like, any example of having a public identity being a bad thing for your relationship, and he decided to bring that up. Like, he could have brought up the numerous times that Linda Parker's almost died because Wally had a public identity, but instead he decided to bring up Sue Dibney's unfortunate situation with Dr. Light. And this really, like, pushes Val to the point where she's like, I can't even do this anymore. You know, like, I can't handle this relationship. Like, I don't think that we're right for each other. And she just breaks up with Bart on the spot. And as far as we know, that's it for Val and Bart. They have officially, their entire relationship crumbled in the space of 2 pages. You know, in the last issue, he was introducing her to Jay and Joanne. In this issue, they've broken up. They literally dated for, like, a couple days. So Bart heads to the police academy, where he acts all snarky and stuff to the teacher there, and the teacher acts like an asshole back. Basically asks Bart to explain what secondary blood splashing, like, how secondary blood splashing occurs, and Bart just, like, says it exactly because he's read every single book in the library. And a policeman shows up and says that there is a villain that is attacking the facility, like the police academy, and Bart assumes that it's somebody that has come for the apocalyptic device, and that it was stupid of him to put it in his own locker, because it was stupid. Like, I don't even know why he did that. Apparently he's one of the smartest people now, because he's read, like, every single book, but he's still dumb enough to put a dangerous artifact that supervillains are after in his police academy locker, because he was too busy thinking about having dinner with his friends. He goes and finds the supervillain. The supervillain turns out to be Steppenwolf, who is Darkseid. He's the brother of Darkseid's mother, so he's Darkseid's uncle. And so Bart faces Steppenwolf in battle. Steppenwolf is really powerful. He has an axe that conducts, like, electrical waves and stuff. And so Bart is like, well, you know, the electricity that comes from his axe is charged by electric particles, So if I run around him, I can speed the particles up. That speed creates DC power. And he's like, oh, there's a joke in there somewhere. And he's like, otherwise known as electricity. And he just blows up Steppenwolf with with a massive surge of electricity. But that doesn't defeat him. No, Steppenwolf is still okay. And as he's about to attack Bart, an arrow breaks his axe in half somehow. I don't get it. It doesn't really make much sense. The axe looks like it's made out of metal, but a simple arrow just shoots straight through it, breaking it in half. Like, how does that make any sense? I know it's a comic book, but like, I think we're really stretching just how powerful a character like Red Arrow is. Roy Harper is the character that shows up and breaks the axe. And also Hal Jordan shows up and punches Steppenwolf with a construct fist. And so they've got Black Canary with them. So Black Canary, Red Arrow, and Green Lantern all trap Steppenwolf. They ask Bart if he's okay, and Bart's like, yeah, it's great. You know, I'm all good. And they're like, oh, you did good, kid. Real good. Thank you, guys. Mind taking out the trash for me? With pleasure. Call if you need anything. And so Bart calls Tim, and Tim's like, hey, glad you called me back. So you're gonna join the Titans? And Bart's like, no, I've been talking to, like, some other people. He basically just says to Tim, no, I'm not gonna join the Titans. Goodbye. Like, I think I'm gonna hold off for a bit until I'm ready. And, he's holding a photo of the Justice League, so it's assumed that Bart is turning down joining the Titans to instead join the Justice League. Now, I get why you would want to join the Justice League. You know, like, they're the big leagues. You know, anyone would want to be a member of the Justice League. But at the same time, it feels odd to me that Bart would be like, screw my friends. I want to hang out with a bunch of people, like, with a bunch of old people that, like, I barely even really know. Like, because he doesn't know the Justice League very much. At least with Wally, it made sense for him to join the Justice League because he grew up with people like Superman and Batman and characters like that. Like, he was surrounded by them because he was so close to Barry Allen, sorry. But Bart is the opposite of that, where, like, Bart hasn't really interacted with anyone like Superman or Batman or any of those. Like, the only people he's interacted with are his fellow Titans, like his fellow age group, those characters like Tim Drake, Connor Kent, and all those, and then like the Flash family. So him deciding that he wants to be on the Justice League over the Titans doesn't make a lot of sense to me. I don't know. I think it would make more sense if Bart would be like, I want to be a member of the Justice League, but at the same time, I'm still going to give some of my time to my friends on the Titans. The fact that he hasn't even really, like, this is the first time he's talked to Tim this entire series, which doesn't really make a lot of sense. I think it's very disappointing that Bart has been completely ignoring his friends up until this point. It doesn't make sense from a character point of view for him to do that. Like, they should have a bit more of a role in this series, and the fact that they don't is really disappointing. That ever since it became the Flash, it's like the Titans just don't exist anymore, and his friends don't exist anymore. Yeah, it's one of the problems with this series. It tries too hard to forget about younger Bart and, like, his friends and family during that era, and tries too hard to become something new and different. Like, the reason he's joined in the Justice League isn't because it makes sense for Bart Allen as a character to join the Justice League. It's because it's because he's the Flash, and the Flash has to be on the Justice League. That's really it. It's as simple as that. It's the only reason he's going to join the Justice League is because he's the Flash. So a couple of policemen investigate the police academy where they notice that the blast through the wall is right next to Bart Allen's locker, so they're going to need to talk to Bart Allen about this because it's pretty suspicious that he's somehow involved. Meanwhile, Bart is on the way to the academy where a shootout is going on the radio, and so Bart goes and takes care of it, and then heads off to the academy where he is asked to, like, he's basically given an assignment to try and figure out a cold case from 5 years ago, where this guy named Brick Bradley was killed. His head was found to be separate from his body, and there was no evidence of his head anymore, and so they have to figure out what happened. So Bart investigates that. Meanwhile, Inertia, the character Inertia, is going around recruiting people. Like, different people to help him kill the Flash. So he recruits Eobard Thawne, who he finds during, I think, the Viking period, where Thawne is just busy watching chaos ensue, because that's just what he loves doing. So he recruits Thawne, and Bart begins investigating the crime scene of Brick Bradley, where he notices that there's some water droplets in the photo beside Bradley's body. So he assumes that maybe some kind of ice villain was responsible for, like, freezing his head off and destroying it or something. So he goes and talks to Icicle, comes to the conclusion that it wasn't him. He goes and talks to Mr. Freeze, and Mr. Freeze is like, why are you coming to talk to me? Why didn't you just go and talk to your rogues first, like Captain Cold? Because that man's head had to have been frozen at absolute zero, and Cold is the only one with the freezing technology to even do that. So Bart goes and talks to Cold. There's this weird moment, and this is where Mark Guggenheim's dialogue is weird. He goes to visit Cold, and he says this. He's like, confess to Brad Brickley's murder, and I'll make sure the Keystone Cops never noticed how funny that was until just now. No wonder this town needs a superhero. Don't extradite you back to LA where they cut the death penalty. Like, it's weird he's, like, making jokes in between sentences that he is saying while trying to handle a serious situation like this. Like, could you imagine if you were talking to somebody and all of a sudden you were like, hey, so I went to the store today, which is kind of funny when I say that because, like, it's a little bit, like, of a joke right there. Like, can you imagine, like, somebody talking like that during a conversation? Doesn't make any sense. So, yeah, he basically forces Cold to admit that he did kill this guy. Cold says he did because he shared a cell with this guy and it was like a revenge thing. He's like, I shared a cell with this guy, I hated him, so I went and killed him. I froze his head and I smashed it. And so Bart's like, alright, I guess I'm gonna have to take you down. It's like, looking for this? And Cold's like, nope, this. And he like, cause Bart grabs like one of his freeze guns and it turns out Cold just has another freeze gun. So he pulls it out and shoots it at Bart. You know, and so Bart fights Cold and is about to take Cold down. Like, he grabs him by the scruff of his neck. But then all of a sudden, a flash of lightning just booms through him. Cold gets away, and it turns out Professor Zoom has arrived. Professor Zoom and Bart Allen fight each other. And you're kind of wondering, like, why is Zoom fighting Bart right now? Why is he a villain again? Like, at the end of the last arc that he was in, which was Rogue War, Zoom seemed to turn over a new leaf. He apologized to Wally. He realized that he realized everything he'd done. He apologized to Wally. He apologized to his wife, and then he disappeared for the foreseeable future. Well, it's actually explained because while Bart is fighting Zoom, his grandmother shows up. Iris. Because it's been a while since she showed up because we kind of forgot that she's still here, and I feel like the writers always forget that she's still in the present. She shows up holding a gun, ready to shoot Bart. And so Bart's just like, what the hell is going on? Like, why is my grandma working with Zoom? Meanwhile, Jay Garrick takes down Heatwave and puts him in a police van. And while Heatwave is in the van, Inertia shows up and recruits him. And so, yeah, we end with on a cliffhanger with Bart at being held at gunpoint by Iris after he's defeated Professor Zoom. It's revealed that Iris is working with Zoom because they want to save Bart, but they don't tell him that right away. Instead, she actually just shoots at him, so he obviously thinks that she's like trying to kill him for some reason. Turns out she's shooting tranquilizers. This whole situation could have been avoided if, like, Zoom and Iris just talked to Bart instead of attacking him immediately, because they basically just say, like, we're trying to shoot these tranquilizers at you to knock you out for at least a week, because something's going to happen in this week that's really bad. And, you know, because I know what happens in the future, the moment you became the Flash, I saw that something really terrible was going to happen to you, and that somebody's going to come after you. Because Bart's just like, what's going to happen? And she's like, not what, who? And it's just like, Bart doesn't trust you anymore, Iris, because you drew a gun on him and tried to shoot him. Maybe you should have just tried talking to him. I don't know why they didn't do that. I don't know why Zoom just didn't take him aside and be like, hey, bud, I'm just here. I'm helping your grandmother, Iris. She's right over there. There's a situation going on where you became the Flash and, like, somebody's going to try and kill you. And so, like, we're trying to, like, you know, we just got to ask you to, like, stop being the Flash, or we need to, like, hide you somewhere real quick. And I feel like he probably would have been like, yeah, sure, of course. I'm glad you explained it to me in a civil manner. But instead, no. They go straight to the tranquilizer guns and try to beat Bart up. Meanwhile, Inertia fights, or doesn't even fight Cold. He goes and sees Cold, who is still running away from the Flash. And, or at least, you know, he thinks he's running away from the Flash. He's just running through the city. And so Inertia comes and he recruits him. And then he goes and recruits Abracadabra as well, for his grand plan. And then he goes and recruits Weather Wizard for his plan. And then he gathers all of the rogues together. And this is the problem that I have with this. So I'm fine with, like, Heatwave being here, Cold being here, Mirror Master being here. Like, that all makes sense because they're all villains. Pied Piper is here for some reason. Why? Why is Pied Piper here? Mark, did you not read Rogue War? Pied Piper was one of the only villains from that arc who actually remained good for the rest of the series. Like, yeah, he was evil at first, right? Much like the other ones. Like, at the beginning of that arc, he did turn evil for a moment. He did turn against Wally. But his goodness came through by the end. And it turned out that he really is good. And that he really did turn over a new leaf. And then Mark just has him here joining the Rogues, and he doesn't explain it at all. But apparently Pied Piper is just a bad guy again. And so he's gathered all the Rogues together, and he reveals to them the Getty Center, which is an art museum. It's like, yeah, they got quite the collection of illuminated manuscripts. Too bad the Titans stopped you from lifting them. If you're all quite finished, the Getty is built on top of a 7-story parking garage. It's unique in terms of elevation and foundational strength. And, so Inertia is planning on building a giant tower out of materials that he bought from the future. We don't know what this thing is going to be for, but apparently that's Inertia's plan. He's building some sort of mysterious tower with the Rogues out of things that he bought from the future for some unknown reason that we'll probably find out. Val comes to visit Bart at the police academy, where she basically apologizes to him and wants to get back together, but Bart is just like, look, the timing isn't good, I need some time, it's just not a good idea for us to get back together just now. He heads off to the police academy and he's told to go to the Parker Center because they need to talk to him. And it's because they found that, you know, Steppenwolf was attacking the academy to get at something that was in Bart Allen's locker. So they're like, what was he after? So they start questioning Bart. Meanwhile, the Rogues attack the Getty Center, including Pied Piper, which really annoys me. It really gets under my skin that he's a villain again for some reason, and it makes no sense. It's so annoying. It's really frustrating to see that. He's not a bad guy. He is a good guy. What are you doing, Mark? So they attack the Getty Center and they take over the museum. So Bart just refuses to tell the police what's going on because he doesn't want to reveal the fact that he's the Flash, because that's the only way to prove that he's innocent. And then a police officer comes in and is like, hey, supervillains are attacking the Getty. And so Bart's like, I gotta... And, like, the cops are like, you gotta do nothing. It's like, what are you doing? Placing you under arrest. What? Bartholomew Allen, you have the right to remain silent. If you give up that right, anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law. You have the right to an attorney. And Bart's like, okay, what? And he vibrates his hand through the shackle, like, through the cuffs. It's like, Steppenwolf attacked the academy because I'm the Flash, and I don't have time to stick around for any more questions. And he reveals his Flash costume, and he puts it on in front of the cops. He's basically just like, I'm the Flash. Yeah, and I don't want to stick around for any more questions. And they're just shocked. seeing him like this. So they pushed Bart to the point where he didn't really have a choice but to reveal who he was. Because, like, he's got to stop these supervillains somehow, and he can't do that if he's under arrest. It's a pretty sick moment, I will say, Bart revealing his identity. Bart heads off to the Getty Museum in order to stop all the supervillains that are there. They've created a force field around the museum, and it turns out that Inertia has told the rogues that the machine that he's building is going to stop time. But Abracadabra is a really smart man who grew up in the 64th century and said that, like, quantum physics and stuff is something that you learn in primary school. And he says that, like, the machine does not stop time. So he's like, what are you using this machine for? And Inertia's like, let's go for a little walk, Kadabra. Meanwhile, Iris appears in front of Val and tells her that she needs her help. Like, it's crucial for Bart's sake. And so Iris takes Val to the museum. Bart gets around the force field by digging his way through the ground. And meanwhile, Inertia beats the crap out of Abracadabra because he's figured out that his real plan isn't to actually stop time, and that it is to absorb the speed force out of Bart's body. So the machine is going to take the speed force out of Bart's body and put it into Inertia's. That's the plan. So Bart shows up to save Abracadabra, but at the same time also beat him up because he's a supervillain, and beat up Inertia. And so he fights Inertia, but then a massive explosion happens from behind him, and the other rogues appear, ready to beat up Bart. There's this moment in this that really fucking annoys me, where Bart turns to Piper. He's like, and Piper, honestly, I expected better from you. And Piper's like, reform is overrated, Flash. So it's like Mark knew, and he just didn't care, and decided to just, like, have Piper be a bad guy again, and just be like, yeah, I didn't want to be, like, reformed. It's like, fuck off. Like, seriously, it's so frustrating. So Bart grabs Piper's flute and breaks it. It's like, you gotta know how this is gonna end. And then Mirror Master's like, actually, he doesn't have the first clue. And he, using a reflection in, like, the wing on Bart's mask, appears from it. And so Bart has to rip the wing off, and he throws it. And then he grabs Cold's freeze gun and uses it against Heatwave. Meanwhile, Iris and Val appear at the machine, where Iris asks Val to pull the machine apart, except she can't, because the machine has already been activated and there's no off switch. All of a sudden, Bart loses control of his powers. The Speed Force has just disappeared from his body, which sends him flying across the ground because he's still moving at 350 miles an hour. The rogues start gathering around him and realize that the Speed Force has been taken away from Bart because of the machine, and it's been given to Inertia. And so they're ready to just kill Bart. Like, Cold's just like, I'm gonna freeze his intestines. And then the Black Flash appears in front of Bart, which is not a good sign, because whenever the Black Flash shows up, it means that Flash is going to die soon. And Iris has given up at this point. She's like, Inertia has succeeded in taking the Speed Force. Oh, Bart. And Val's just like, look, this is bigger than just Bart losing his powers. Inertia has taken the Speed Force into himself, but what he doesn't know is that the Speed Force was biologized. And there's too much power for the machine to contain, and for Inertia as well. So when Inertia receives the Speed Force, he's not going to be able to contain it all. Some of it's going to go back to the machine, it's going to overload the machine. The amount of energy that will be inside Inertia and the machine is that of 10 atomic bombs. Inertia will release the energy, therefore releasing an energy amount worth of 10 atomic bombs, which is not a good thing. Meanwhile, Bart has no powers and all the rogues are coming straight at him. We get a flashback to the future, 2989, back when Bart was still training in a virtual reality. He has a talk with his grandfather, Barry Allen, a virtual reality version of him. Basically just explains to him that he wants to be a hero like him. He's like, you know what a hero is? Somebody like you. And Barry's like, thanks for the vote of confidence, but a hero is just someone who stands when their legs are gone. Which is referring to the fact that Bart has lost his speed force, but he's willing to keep standing and keep fighting anyway. So Val says to Iris that she might not be able to turn off the machine. But then Iris realizes that this situation with Bart, this point in time, is in flux, which means that Bart's life, there's still a chance that she can save it, as long as she helps him. So she decides to try and fight the rogues alongside Bart. And Bart's like, what the hell are you doing? And Iris is like, I'm trying to help you. It's like, I'll take care of it. Like, basically, she's like, Val is trying to activate the machine. I'm trying to give her time to do that. And Bart's like, I'll be the one that does it. You get to safety. I'll make some time for Val. And Iris is like, no, you can't do it yourself. You're going to need my help. And Bart just doesn't listen to her and is like, look, I've got to do this, and I'm not letting you go in harm's way, Iris. And so he knocks her out. It's like, hey, Val, anything interesting happened to you today? Your mother's quite a woman, isn't she, though? But Bart, she picked the wrong person for this job. I can't. Yes, you can. I know you can't. So how much time do you need? 10 minutes, maybe? Do it. I can buy you another 10 minutes. But there's no reverse button. Do you hear what I'm saying? I can't put the Speed Force back in you. At least not without blowing up the West Coast up. Just so long as the West Coast doesn't blow up. I can discharge the energy build-up by releasing all of it, but that includes the Speed Force and... Val, it's okay. Pied Piper realizes that Inertia played them, and so he beats the crap out of Inertia and then brings him to the rest of the rogues, where it's revealed to them that Inertia's real plan was to take the Speed Force from Bart, which he succeeded in doing. Abracadabra also reveals to them that Bart and Inertia are essentially one and the same, that they are directly related to each other, and that Bart may look like a 20-year-old, but he's actually a kid underneath, and they can tell by looking in his eyes because they still see the usefulness of a young boy in his eyes. And so now they can get their revenge on Inertia, and at the same time kill the Flash because he doesn't have the Speed Force anymore. And so, but Bart doesn't want to go down without a fight. So he's like, you know what? Let me put it to you this way. I am the Flash. And he breaks out of, like, Captain Cold's grip and starts fighting Inertia while the Black Flash watches in the background. And then it's revealed that Bart had already had a conversation with Iris where Iris is like, the thing that's going to happen to you over the next week is that you are going to die. I went back to the future to check. I read your obituary. It happens, Bart. I'm so sorry. It's okay. It's all going to be okay. Listen, Grandma. If that's the future, then that's the future. It's going to be what it's going to be. And I'll be fine, really. I'm okay with it. And so Bart fights the rogues while Iris wakes up and sees this. Inertia tries running to the machine to stop Val from shutting it down. Bart chases after him. She's like, Bart! And he's fast enough to stop Inertia from stopping the machine from being shut down by Val. And the rogues catch up to Bart, and they all start shooting him with all of their weapons. She's like, no, Bart! And he's like, I'm not going back to prison! And so Bart just gets, like, fire blasted at him, ice, lightning, and then they all just crowd around him and start beating the crap out of him. And he's just like, you know, they're all beating me up and stuff, but I don't care. Like, I still smile because Val did it. And so the machine, all of the energy gets released from the machine, which stops it from blowing up and destroying half the coast. The danger's over. Thousands of lives, tens of thousands are spared. Bart just goes, ugh, and he falls over onto the ground, and Val runs over to him. She's like, Bart! Val, the Speed Force. I know, it's out. Good, good. Tap into it with the speed. You can heal. Already tried. But the Speed Force isn't working the way it should. I can't. Oh God, it's okay. It's Wally, Bart, I'm sorry I was a jerk. You weren't. I think we would have worked out, you know? Yeah, we would. Don't know what it feels like, but I think I love. And then Bart dies. No kidding, he straight up dies. And Tim, his phone goes off, his phone rings, he picks up his phone, and then he just drops it and slumps onto the ground because one of his best friends has just died. We see Jessie Quick for the first time in a long time. She's currently on the JSA as Liberty Bell. She approaches Jay, clearly having heard the news, and they console one another. And then we see some candles and a statue of Bart as Bart monologues over it. My name is Bart Allen. I'm the fastest man alive. End of the day, you only need to know 2 things about me. I run fast, and I help people. The end. Bart Allen's dead. And that was The Flash, the fastest man alive. Yeah, a lot of conflicting feelings about this series. First 6 issues were fine because Jay Garrick was in the series and he definitely helped carry the series. I always enjoyed Jay Garrick and he was great in this. He wasn't in the rest of the series. Yeah, the Bart's whole story in this was just not it. Like, it wasn't Bart Allen, and this series was doomed from the beginning. The whole Bart becoming the Flash idea was just so forced because it didn't make sense for Bart Allen as a character to become the Flash, especially permanently. Because when this series started from Dan DiDio, who was the one who forced Jeff Johns to make Bart the Flash and get rid of Wally, Bart was supposed to be the Flash permanently. It wasn't supposed to end with his death. You know, and Mark Waid and Jeff Johns fought tooth and nail to stop Bart from becoming the Flash. The reason why it doesn't make sense for Bart to become the Flash is because he was never supposed to be a legacy character to begin with. Mark Waid created him to subvert the idea of a legacy character, where Bart is not that. He is his own character. That's why he was Impulse and not Kid Flash. And so the first mistake they made was by making him Kid Flash, which got rid of his own identity and kind of took away the whole purpose of his character. And then the second thing they did was just change his personality to be more like Barry. And then the nail in the coffin was aging him up and making him the Flash. Like, they essentially... It was a death sentence for Bart. Because it was guaranteed that it wasn't going to be popular. You know, Dan DiDio, for some reason, thought that a series about Bart Allen being the Flash was going to be liked by people. But what he wasn't thinking about was that, like, the Bart Allen fans grew up with Impulse. Like, all of his fans have been there since day one of, like, when he was introduced in The Flash as Impulse, in the Young Justice, that kind of stuff. So, you know, his main fan base, who would be the ones that would buy this book, didn't like the premise of the book, and it wasn't received well at all. It doesn't help that the first 6 issues featured a villain called the Griffin, who wasn't a very good villain, was a pretty bad character, and just everything that Bart was up to in the book just sucked. Remember that Roxanne Snow character who showed up for that one issue? Like, that is an example of why this... You can tell that this book was originally planned to be an ongoing, and that it was very quickly, like, shifted gears. Because, like, we introduced that character who was very clearly supposed to be a reoccurring character, but she never showed up again. We switched writers all of a sudden, because the series was selling really badly, and so Dan DiDio handed it over to Mark Guggenheim, and told him to kill Bart off. That was his... That was the way he was going to resolve this. The series was selling badly, and so his decision was to kill off Bart. And he even called Mark Waid and was like, we're killing off Bart. Like, I thought I should tell you that we're killing Bart off. And Mark Waid said, like, the greatest thing ever. He was like, you already did that. Like, I don't care anymore. You already killed him, like, years ago. And, yeah, so they went ahead with it, and they killed off Bart Allen, and, it sucks. But that's not the only thing about this series that sucks. The whole situation with Pied Piper, you know, like, the average DC fan probably wouldn't care at all about Pied Piper being a villain or not. Being a Flash fan, being someone that's read all of the Flash comics from, from the 80s up until now, getting to know Pied Piper as a character, seeing his redemption arc, and then having it just be torn down like this, and even kind of mocked as well, where, like, Mark includes a line in it where Pied Piper just says, being reformed is stupid. It just feels like you're kind of spitting in the face of the fans and the stuff that they love, and the years of character development that these characters have gone through. Like, it was frustrating that Heatwave was redeemed and then turned into a villain as well. But Pied Piper is one of those situations where it's especially frustrating because, like, he was Wally West's best friend, and the way things had left off in Rogue War, he was still a good guy. So it was really frustrating that they just ignored that and just made him a bad guy again for no reason other than they just didn't give a shit. And so that's frustrating. Because he wasn't just like one of those villains that was like, oh, he redeemed for a couple of months and then became a bad guy again. It's like, no, he was redeemed for like over 10 years. Like almost 20 years he had been a redeemed character. He had become a crucial part of the Flash family and a very close friend of Wally. So it's just frustrating to see him be done dirty like this. And to see Bart get done dirty like this. Look, I've thought about, like, how I would do things differently if I was to have been the one in control of the series. And it's really hard to do anything differently and still make it good. I think the problem wasn't making Bart the Flash. Again, it was the problem of trying to make him permanent. I think him becoming the Flash is a great idea, temporarily. And then Wally should come back and take over as the Flash again until, Barry Allen gets brought back to life. Yeah, the idea should have been that, like, the Speed Force is inside Bart. And then he becomes the Flash for, like, 6 issues. You cut out all of the Griffin stuff, get rid of all that. Focus entirely on Inertia and Motor, not the rest of the Rogues, just them. Do a 6-issue plot that involves Inertia and Motor trying to kill the Flash using Valerie. And by the end of the book, Inertia, like by the end of that 6th issue, or during that 6th issue or 5th issue, Inertia draws the Speed Force out of Bart. And instead of, taking away Bart's powers, he still has super speed, but what drawing the Speed Force out of him does is it just reverts his age back to how it was before. He's no longer 20 years old, he's back to being 16, and then Wally comes back, because he wouldn't come back until something else called Lightning Strikes, or The Lightning Returns, whatever it's called. So Wally comes back, Bart goes back to being Kid Flash or Impulse, whatever the one they feel like, and everything's hunky-dory. Like, he beats Inertia and Motor, everything's back to normal. Like, they could have done something like that, and it would have worked. And I think it would have been fine. But they didn't do that. Instead, they went the wrong way. And the Black Flash shows up, and he doesn't even do anything, which I find really funny. Like, he doesn't even chase after Bart and try to kill him. He just watches as Bart dies, which I guess is kind of cool, but yeah. So that was The Flash, the fastest man alive. I see why people hate it. Yeah, it's definitely a book. I will say, one positive about this book is that it is the art. The art in this book is fantastic. It's really good. If there's any reason to read this, it's just so that you can see the art of the book. Now, this could have been good. There are signs of something good in here, but it is entrenched in just unnecessary stuff. Like, just bad writing, bad character writing, bad decisions, bad editorial decisions. Didio, you should be ashamed that this book exists. If you're a big fan of Bart Allen, don't read this book. Just don't read it, because you're only going to be upset. It's only going to make you mad. Yeah. Unless you're a Jay Garrick fan. If you're a Jay Garrick fan, read the first 6 issues. You'll enjoy them. But yeah, that's going to be it for this week's episode. I hope you enjoyed it. And next week, we are going to be starting 52, the 52 issue series event that was written by Jeff Johns, Mark Waid, Greg Rucka, and Grant Morrison, that fills in the missing year. So we're going to be starting that next week, and I'm really excited to get into that because apparently it is the greatest event of all time. Like, I often hear people say it's the greatest story in DC history. So I'm really excited to check it out. I hope you enjoyed this week's episode, and I hope to see you next week for 52.